Now available in paperback, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. I just saw the trailer for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and after seeing Dial of Destiny's trailer, I just want to change the channel. And I want to change the channel on Dial of Destiny because, as I see it, the Indiana Jones character has run out of stories and run out of time, but your Disney is still trying to milk the carcass of the Indiana Jones franchise, hoping for a cash grab based on nostalgia because they're too afraid to go out here and explore fresh new concepts by creators like myself. Now, as I see it, the whole Indiana Jones franchise ended in 1989 with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which featured Sean Connery as Indiana Jones' dad, should have been the period put at the end of the Indiana Jones franchise, and movie studios should have been moving on to new and different stories instead of trying to rehash all of these old stories. Because, as I see it, Last Crusade basically wrapped up the character in a nice fashion and left the imagination open for the audience as related to the Indiana Jones character. However, these studios were still looking to try to get easy cash grabs, and in 2008 they came up with Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And as they created Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we started to see that the character was starting to decline as related to quality of stories. And this story was basically one that your George Lucas put together in order to try to wrap up this character and put a nice finale at the end of his story. And your Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did a great job of wrapping up Indiana Jones' story and organically putting a period at the end of a series that really ended in 1989. In 2008, they went out here and wrapped up his story with Indy getting married and possibly leaving the door open for adventures to continue with his son, who was played by Shia LaBeouf. Now, if you really wanted to go and do a new Indiana Jones story, you should have done it with his son. Unfortunately, what your George Lucas wound up selling Lucasfilm to Disney, and as he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, your Disney, because they didn't want to invest in creatives like myself, what they wanted to do was mine old intellectual properties, and what they wanted to do was create a new Indiana Jones and create this one to try to appeal to audiences based on nostalgia instead of trying to create a brand new audience with a brand new concept. So what they're doing with your Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny just shows the desperation of Disney in an effort to try to go out here and get an easy box office cash grab, because what's presented in this film shows a desperate company that is completely out of ideas and just really trying to mine what's left of a story that had finished almost 30 years ago, as I see it. Because as I see it, the entire story of Indiana Jones basically wrapped up in 1989, and it should have been left to end in 1989. However, there are some who say that the story ended in 2008, almost 15 years ago, and we should have just put a period at the end of things and let that character go on to remain popular in the annals of cinematic history. Unfortunately, there are those at Disney who are just so caught up in trying to make easy cash grabs on nostalgia that they go out here and look to create more movies. And what I saw in the trailer was an uninspired film with a sad-looking and pathetic-looking Harrison Ford just trying to meander through a movie, that franchise that he had already outgrown over 30 years ago. Because what I saw in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was an attempt to try to turn back the clock of time, but it just shows me how there is no real story here, because what they're trying to do with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny shows all of the desperate tactics that we are not so creative people use in order to try to make a story be where there is no story. Now, your Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is looking like it's some sort of time travel movie, and time travel is one of those things that bad writers go out here and do when they're desperate to try to create a plot. And that's what it looks like they're trying to do with Indiana Jones, trying to make it look like your Indiana Jones is having to do things with magic and time travel. And this is one of those things that just shows me you're just running out of stuff stories to tell, and you're just trying to throw a premise together. Now, this whole premise is not only a mess because of the time travel aspect, it's also a mess because it looks like your Kathleen Kennedy is trying to put in another self-insert character like she did with Rey in Star Wars. Now, when I look at your Star Wars sequel trilogy, it was ruined by your Kathleen Kennedy's self-insert known as Rey, who was basically a Mary Sue, and it looks like she's putting another Mary Sue inside of Indiana Jones's story with this female who is supposed to be the one driving the story after Indiana Jones is wiped out of existence after going back in time and stopping his younger self when his younger self possibly kills himself in order to make a sacrifice. And then this woman has to come in and try to change up things. It looks like, again, just a really horrible story, and it's one that should have never been greenlit. And I doubt it wouldn't have been greenlit had there been another name attached to this character. But because the name Indiana Jones gets butts into seats, they tie this really weak story onto him. And this basically does damage to an already aged franchise that has basically run its course. Now, what I'm seeing as a problem in Hollywood as related to these franchise movies like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that the studios are just so afraid of trying new concepts that they just go out here and continue to play it safe. And as they play it safe, they hope to go out here and mine old concepts, hoping to try to bring back old audience members. And what that does is it really stifles the growth of the entertainment industry, because your Indiana Jones is an over 30-year-old character, and his story has been told. So this character is basically depreciated and worn out, but they're still trying to mine this character for everything that he has, but there's nothing there as related to value story-wise. I mean, there's no more story to tell, but that's not going to stop your Disney from trying to milk this character for all it's worth. And what's really sad is what we see on screen reeks of so much desperation, because it's just the visuals are uninspired and by the numbers. The character designs are boring. Everything here just has no real energy or the spark that the original Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Indiana Jones on the Last Crusade had. It has none of that energy, none of that heart. And when I look at Harrison Ford, he looks like a tired old man at 82 years old, still trying to play like he did back in his 20s and early 30s. I mean, he's basically outgrown this character, and this character just needs to be retired at this point. But that's not stopping Hollywood, because they want to continue making fast money on old characters, not understanding how they're impeding their own growth by going out here and continuing to invest in old characters. But that's all part of, I believe, the boomers' fear of their own mortality, because many of the baby boomers who are running Hollywood, they're afraid of passing away, and they're afraid of being forgotten. So they're going to try to hold on to their old favorite characters And instead of going out here and letting new characters come up and letting the new generation get to know and connect with those characters. Now, I remember Retro Blasting talking about how these old characters, they are really stifling the growth of things because, yes, the nostalgia crowd is, you're going to make money in the short term with them. However, you're not creating any new audiences or new customers with new concepts, and this is what's really hurting the toy industry right now. And as a collector, I just see, like, how many Captain Americas can I own? How many Batmans can I own? I mean, it just gets to a point where you just go, okay, I've got like 5 or 6 Batmans, but you're not selling any new characters to the kids out here, and they're not getting to see characters that are their own. And that's not only hurting the toy industry, it's also hurting the movies, because kids need to see brand new characters like I, as a Gen Xer, received. I mean, I loved watching movies like Star Wars and Tim Burton's Batman and many other great 80s movies like Ghostbusters, but I'm one of those guys who says it's time to pass the torch, and it's time for Hollywood to stop investing in these old characters who have gone past their shelf life. I mean, Indiana Jones is a 40-year-old concept, and it's looking old right now. And to bring Harrison Ford out here, this doesn't make him look strong or confident. It makes him look sad and pathetic to see an 82-year-old Indiana Jones still trying to go out here and crack the whip and trying to fire the gun like he did in the old movies. And then you're trying to use CGI to try to cover up the everything to overcompensate for your really weak story, and also to allow Kathleen Kennedy's Mary suit insert in order for her to drive a story. No, instead of going out here and trying to get audiences with an old brand name like Indiana Jones, how about Kathleen Kennedy create her own original character and have them go on the same types of adventures? Oh wait, we had a character like that in the 90s. Her name was Lara Croft, and she was a very popular character in the Tomb Raider franchise, and that would make it, people look at this character and see it basically as a Tomb Raider ripoff. Moreover, we've already had Tomb Raider movies, but that shouldn't really discourage any really creative person, because all it takes is a little bit of creativity to create something fresh and original and make it fresh and unique for a new audience of people and let them get to know a brand new character. I mean, when I look at your modern day Hollywood, it's just a bunch of fraidy cat cowards who are afraid to do the things that people did back in the late 70s and the 80s. I mean, I remember the days when they made these movies like Indiana Jones. These movies were not made with big budgets. These movies were made with small budgets and unknown actors, and they became blockbusters and phenomenons because creators out there weren't afraid to take a risk. But these days, today's creatives are so afraid to take a risk. That's why we get this bland, mediocre, so-called entertainment. And that's why we get really whack movies like your Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And if I saw this movie based on what I saw in the trailer on television, I would be quick to change the channel, because I don't have time to sit there and watch another boring off the GM assembly line version of an Indiana Jones movie after watching your George Lucas go out here and Steven Spielberg create masterpieces in the original Indiana Jones trilogy. No, what Disney has gone out here and produced is an uninspired knockoff that basically just feels like you're just trying to scavenge up a cash grab at the expense of the nostalgia audience. But when I look at this movie, it's just the end of the nostalgia train, and it just shows how the Indiana Jones franchise is at the end of the line. I mean, when it comes down to this Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, this whole time travel plot device, this insert of a Kathleen Kennedy avatar, and just weak special effects and bad character development, because when you have a time travel story, that you're really scavenging the bottom of the barrel. But it just shows what happens when you just don't know when to put a period at the end of a story. and let that character just move on, and let the audience imagine the ending of that character's story. As I see it, Crystal Skull wasn't the greatest movie, but it was a period at the end of the story. And when you're a creative, you have to know when to end a character's story. And I've had to do that with several other characters. I mean, there are characters I like to work with and I have ideas for, but sometimes I just sit there and say, okay, I'm just going to put a period at the end of their story, and I'm just going to move on. I mean, I remember when I was working on the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and after I did Spinsterella, I said I wanted to do a story about Matilda's baby bat years, and I went back and I did Spellbound, and that book, people really liked it. But then after I did Legendary Mad Matilda, which was the book about her in her adolescent phase in the goth subculture, I decided, okay, I need to put a period at the end of this character. While I like working with the Matilda Crowley character, I don't want to go out here and put out a bad story with this character, and I don't want to alienate the audience, so I would rather maintain the integrity of that character, wrap up their story with the last book, and then put a ending on that character story, and where it's a period. And if I would want to come back, I could come back, but I really sometimes sit there and go, no, I don't want to go back and write a bad story, so I'll leave this character the way they are, and I'll leave them there so that the audience can imagine what may possibly have happened, and until I can get a good story and a good idea, I'm going to leave this open, and I'm going to leave it alone. That's what I did with the Matilda Crowley character after I wrote Legendary Mad Matilda in 2017. I said, okay, I need to just cool it down, leave it alone, let the Spinsterella character rest, and I'm just going to leave it alone and go focus on some other characters. And that's where I started putting in work on Eternal Night and Lilith's Grave story, because I said I want to do a different goth character, and I don't want to just keep working on the same one. And sadly, you got people in Hollywood who don't really understand that there's a time when a creator has to put a period at the end of a character story. No, they keep thinking that they're going to have cash grabs forever, and ironically, they put themselves in a place where they're going to go bankrupt like they did in the 60s by continuing to rehash the same characters over and over again, instead of taking the creative risks that they did in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, where they went out here creating fresh new concepts and creating on low budgets, and allowing those new franchises to replace the old franchises that have basically run out of gas. Because when I looked at Dial of Destiny, I saw a franchise that had run out of time, run out of stories, run out of plot, run out of road. And when I looked at this whole movie's trailer, I don't see a movie I want to see. All I see is one of the biggest box office bombs of 2023. Now, if you want to pick up the books of the Spinsterella trilogy that I talked about in this video, you can find those books, Spellbound, Legendary Mad Matilda, and Spinsterella, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to pick up the other books in the SJS Direct Fantasy, like the Isis series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and other books I've done like Eternal Night, you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me talk more about fantasy and science fiction, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's Aspiring Angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today.